Good afternoon, everyone. We're happy to have you back on for another BEAD Challenge Lunch and Learn. I'm Nancy Essery-Wodralgo, State Specialist with Illinois Extension Community and Economic Development, and I'm welcoming back Devon Braunstein from the Illinois Office of Broadband, as well as Shubika Agrawal from the Illinois Broadband Lab. They're going to provide you more information and tools to assist you with the BEAD Challenge rebuttal process. So yeah, we're just so lucky to have you both on again, providing ongoing assistance with communities across our great state and on this platform as well as beyond. And we all look forward to the year ahead with the BEAD funding opportunities. So really appreciate this additional outreach and the continued assistance that you give us. Thank you, Shubika and Devon. Without further hesitation, I'll pass it over to you now, Devon. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nancy. And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. My lights did just go out, so hopefully this means they will stay on for the whole hour, but wish me luck. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So we scheduled this additional webinar today to do more of a live demo on some of the tools related to the rebuttal process. And I think now that we're in the process, there are some questions about what the different challenges mean, where can you respond? So we are doing our best to be as clear as possible, but when in doubt, let's bring everyone together and kind of walk through it step by step. Also want to remind everyone that we do have office hours every Tuesday and Thursday through May 6th, the end of the rebuttal phase. And so if you have more of a specific question that might take longer, or you want to walk through one-on-one, we can do it during that time. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. Okay, great. So I'm Devon Braunstein, Assistant Director of the Office of Broadband, and here I'll kick off the slides. So today's agenda, pretty simple. We'll talk through a recap of the challenge process and the timeline. We'll review what the rebuttal phase is and then dig into different tools and resources. After this webinar, we hope that you will be familiar with highlights from the challenge phase and then understand how to participate in the rebuttal phase. And so I know we may have some new folks here today who were kind of brought into this process because they might have received challenges against their service. So I will review kind of the basics of the BEAD program and the challenge process. And again, can talk further about this in questions or through office hours as needed. So we are going through this whole process because it is a part of the BEAD program, and that stands for Broadband Equity Access and Deployment. So the goal of the BEAD program is every state in the United States, every state and territory is getting funding to be able to connect all underserved and unserved locations to quality, affordable broadband over the next 5 years. So there's a prioritization order and various processes that we as states need to follow in order to access these dollars and begin our subgrantee process to select providers to connect all of those areas that currently do not have service or do not have quality service that meets the standards of reliable broadband technology and speeds as defined through the statute. So a couple of highlights here. The goal is to ensure universal coverage across the state using fiber wherever possible. We'll have 1 year to select our subgrantees and then an additional 4 years to complete implementation. Priority will go to unserved and underserved locations, and then community anchor institutions and multi-dwelling units. And we will have a low-cost affordability option as a part of this subgrantee program. So this slide shows the end-to-end challenge process. This is a 120-day process that we're required to go through thanks to NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, who's governing the BEAD program and all of our broadband work. So where we are now, we got to move that little, oops, sorry y'all. I got to move that little star from challenge validation phase to rebuttal phase since we talked last week. And so let's see, we first published all of the eligible locations back in February. We had a 21-day challenge process where we accepted challenges to the map from nonprofits, local governments, and internet service providers. Sorry, give me 1 second. And then And then we entered the challenge validation phase, where a team of reviewers looked at all the evidence and challenges and sort of set everything up to move ahead to the rebuttal process. So now we're in that rebuttal phase where the challenges have been published online on the dashboard, and folks are invited to submit rebuttals. So we'll talk through who can submit a rebuttal and to what challenge, how you know where to find that challenge and where to submit that information. After the rebuttal phase, we'll move into final adjudication, where the state will take all of the evidence received through both the challenge phase and the rebuttal phase, and we'll make final determinations on the connectivity status and coverage of every broadband serviceable location and community anchor institution. Then we'll submit that final data set to NTIA, and they will review it, ask us any questions, and approve us. And then that will allow us to start our subgrantee process to actually get these dollars moving and out the door. So quick review of what the challenge process is. So what is the purpose of the challenge process? The goal is to make sure that the state's broadband map, so the map of broadband availability at every location across the state, accurately reflects the realities of what folks are experiencing on the ground. So accurately reflects your home or your organization's access to broadband. And this is important because it informs which locations are eligible for funding, as well as the order of priority that funding will be released to different locations. Who can submit challenges? So there are 3 eligible challenger categories: units of local government, nonprofit organizations, and internet service providers. And then individuals were also able to participate by way of local governments or nonprofits. So by taking speed tests that were then provided to a nonprofit or a local government, sort of collecting information from their residents and then submitting that as a challenge. What can be challenged? Every location displayed on the BEAD challenge map can be challenged if characteristics like availability, speed, latency, or others were not accurately listed. And when will the challenge process be held? So it opened on February 20th, and the challenge phase formally opened on February 27th and ran through March 18th. And an overall, just reminder, this is the first time that states have the chance to influence their broadband maps at all. So previous to this, we were very reliant on the FCC and maps created between the federal government and providers. So while we kind of work to make this process as best as it can be to reach as accurate as a map as possible, I think it's important to keep this in perspective that, you know, this is huge progress from what we've been able to do before. And so all of your participation during the challenge phase and now during the rebuttal phase will really have a huge impact on the next 5 years of connectivity in Illinois. So this slide goes over key terms and definitions that you'll hear throughout the BEAD process. Broadband serviceable location, or BSL, this is really any location on the map. So this could be a business, this could be a house, a residence, really any location where broadband can be installed. The kind of alternative to this is community anchor institution, or CAI. So we have a clear definition of what comprises a community anchor institution. A couple of examples: a school, a library, a community center that helps folks connect to the internet. So we receive lots of challenges telling us, hey, this is actually a CAI, let's mark it as such. Then the second, third, and fourth terms on this list all characterize a classification of a broadband location based on its speed and latency. So an unserved location doesn't have access to any broadband. And based on this program, broadband is defined as speeds of 25/3 megabits per second. So if a location has access to the internet, but those speeds are 10/1, it is considered unserved, and it is top priority, and we're actually required to connect that location to broadband through the BEAD program. The next category here is underserved. So this is a location that may have access to 25/3 megabits per second, but it doesn't quite have access to the next threshold, which is 100/20 Mbps. So let's say it has access to, 50/5. It's considered underserved. A location can also be considered underserved based on its latency. So you can discover what a location's latency is through speed testing. And if latency is greater than 100 milliseconds, that's considered slow or latency. It'll kind of slow down the processing or make videos choppy. A location with higher latency than 100 is considered underserved as well. So underserved is the second category, second priority for getting connected through this program. And then served locations are locations with speeds of 100 over 20 Mbps or higher. It does not mean that the household must be enrolled in those speeds, but if those speeds are available to the households, it is considered served, again, by the definitions of this program. MDU is essentially an apartment building, so housing structure with 2 or more units. I talked briefly about latency, but we're looking for latency 100 or lower. So this slide summarizes what could be challenged. And so if you're kind of new to this process, every challenge falls into one of these challenge types. So this could be a challenge to a service available at a location. If the map said that there was, a certain speed available and 3 speed tests over 3 days showed that the median was lower than that, that would be a challenge submitted. Same thing with availability, or maybe someone has evidence showing that there's only business service available at this location, not residential. So we'll talk about this, but all of these challenges to service will go to the internet service provider who is being challenged, and they will have a chance to rebut this with evidence. The second bucket here are challenges that internet service providers will have likely submitted. So planned or existing service, maybe our map using federal data was outdated. And so a provider said, we actually do serve these areas. Here are here's proof of our service, or service maps, customer bills, something that gives us confidence that, yes, these areas are served. Planned service, we needed things like leases, progress showing that, you will have these connected locations up and running by June of 2024, etc. Enforceable commitments are grant-funded programs, either state grants or federal grants, where there is some contractual agreement that broadband will be deployed in these locations within a certain amount of time. And then finally, community anchor institutions. So we accepted challenges from folks saying that a location should be noted as a CAI or should not be. So maybe it closed, or maybe it's actually a house. It does not need that CAI gigabit level service. All right, so going into the rebuttal phase. So during the rebuttal phase, any entity who received a challenge against their service will be notified of that and can submit a rebuttal with supporting evidence to dispute the claim should they want to. All challenges have been posted with their status on the dashboard, which I'll show in a couple minutes. And then challenges that are eligible for open rebuttal are available for any member of the public who is an eligible challenger to rebut. And an eligible challenger is the same definition as an eligible rebutter is the same definition as an eligible challenger. A nonprofit, a local government, or an internet service provider. Individuals are welcome to work with those parties to collect evidence and submit it on their behalf. The rebuttal phase takes place again for 21 days, started yesterday and goes through May 6th. So any rebuttal evidence that will be submitted, we have to receive it by May 6th at 11:59 p.m. Central Time. Who can participate? I just walk through the general parameters, but the eligible rebutters depends on the challenge type. So we'll go into that now. I think this table is the best way to summarize what you should be paying attention to based on who you are. So if you think about it along challenge type lines, I think that's, at least for me, the easiest way to compartmentalize and kind of understand, what's what here. So the first set of challenge types in this top left-hand quadrant here are all challenges to service. So availability, latency, speed, data cap, technology, and business service only. These came in as challenges against a provider's service. So now these challenges will go directly to that provider to have the chance to submit evidence rebutting or disputing this claim. ISPs whose service is challenged have the option to participate in the rebuttal process by submitting evidence. They could also accept the challenge if the challenge was correct, or they don't act at all, and with that, we'll kind of default to accepting that challenge. So I should have contact people for all of the ISPs who receive challenges. And so all of you should have either received an email from me if you did get challenges levied against you, or an invitation from the portal to log in to view challenges. We'll talk through what the different types of challenges are in a minute. If you don't remember getting an email and you want to just double check, I encourage you to log on to the portal. So the IL BEAD mapping, I'll pull up the exact link in a second. Illinois.broadbandmapping.org. You can log in, same login that you use for the challenge process, and you'll be able to review any challenges that are eligible for your rebuttal. And again, we'll go into details. The second category here is for nonprofits, local governments, and other ISPs. This category is called open rebuttal. So if you are one of those three entities, this is what you should pay attention to. So internet service providers may have submitted challenges under planned or existing service, enforceable commitments, or anyone may have submitted challenges around community anchor institutions, saying something should or should not be considered one. So all of these are available on our dashboard, and through that dashboard, any eligible challenger can complete an open rebuttal form where it'll be linked to that challenge, and they can submit evidence and an explanation to submit that. You have to be pre-registered, but you can complete that form anytime before the end of the rebuttal phase. And I think many folks on this call are already pre-registered. This just helps us confirm who you are and that you are eligible to participate in this way. So first, I'm going to go through if you are an internet service provider or ISP. If you received challenges that are eligible for your direct rebuttal, you will have received an email from verification@ilbroadbandmapping.org or illinoisbroadbandmapping.org telling you to log into the portal. Again, this is the same portal that you used before to submit challenges. And if you didn't participate in the challenge phase, you'll be invited to join, create a password, and log in to view your rebuttals. So you'll view them, and then you'll have sort of options on how to handle each one. You can update the status of the rebuttals until May 6th at 11:59 p.m. So this is what it looks like once you log into the portal. You enter the portal. On the left-hand side, you'll see rebuttal opportunities. You click on that, and then you can view any challenges that you can submit rebuttals for. Important note is that each line here is at the submission level. So there could be one challenge in a submission, there could be 100. That's just depending on that specific submission. So just know that every line is a submission, and then there could be a series of challenges there. You can download the evidence, or you can export the data as a CSV to view details, and then click on respond to make that decision of whether you want to rebut or accept. So this is what it looks like where you respond. So you click on a status, you can write some notes and upload evidence. And again, this is another option. If you wanted to accept the challenge, you can go ahead and do that here. If you want to edit the status of your rebuttal decision, you can kind of see them categorized on the left-hand side here by challenges rebutted or challenges accepted. We heard your feedback from the challenge phase that it was hard not being able to edit or view what you submitted, and so hopefully this makes it a little bit easier. So area and MDU challenges. There are kind of three categories of challenges that ISPs can rebut. The first is what we just went through. So these are kind of any challenge to a single or multiple BSLs or broadband serviceable locations that did not fall into area and MDU challenges. So an area challenge was triggered if there were 6 or more BSLs using one technology and sort of sharing a technology and a provider within the same census block group. If there were 6 challenges that made it through, this triggers an area challenge. And so this requires the provider to demonstrate that they can serve that entire census block group. So this is something written into our initial proposal, volume 1, and comes from NTIA's model challenge process that we adopted. An MDU challenge is kind of a similar idea, but specific to the building. So an MDU has 2 or more units. If there was 1 unit challenged within a building of 2 to 15 units, then that triggers an MDU challenge, and the provider needs to demonstrate that they can serve all of the units in that building. If it's a 16 to 24 unit building and 2 units were challenged, then it triggers, needing to confirm service for the whole building, and same with 3 units for 25 and higher unit buildings. And so we have a separate form for each of these. Note that that qualified under an area or MDU challenge are not also included in the portal because we didn't want to have you reply more than once in a duplicative way. So everything is kind of its own unique set. So responding to area challenges. Area challenges related to availability need to be rebutted in entirety or by location with evidence that shows services available for all locations in that census block group. So for wired service, this could be network diagrams that show fiber going to every household or every location. It could be customer bills. That's a pretty easy way to show that you currently serve a location there. For fixed wireless, you have the opportunity to offer a representative sample, so showing no more than 10 locations, how you can serve them with availability and speed. We have some suggested evidence here, and we offered a spreadsheet to complete that we're requesting that fixed wireless providers complete, so we can feel really good about the service that is being provided in all of these areas. Other things that are helpful: customer bills, tower leases, just things that give us a lot of confidence that the service is there and that we're getting this map right, and our BEAD dollars can go the farthest. Speed test guidance. So some of the challenges that were levied against providers are speed challenges. And so this slide shows some guidance on what you can provide in terms of evidence for speed tests for the rebuttal phase. So speed test requirements can be for at least 10% of the customers in the challenged area. The customers have to be randomly selected, and you can apply the 80-80 rule. So 80% of these locations must experience a speed that equals or exceeds 80% of the speed threshold. So we have some examples here. To meet the 25/3 Mbps thresholds, 80% of locations have to have a speed of at least 20 Mbps and an upload speed of at least 2.4. And you can see another example on this slide. And we require speed tests be taken between the hours of 7 to 11 p.m. local time. So now I'll show you the form. Switch my screen. All right. So if you received an opportunity to rebut an area challenge, you would have also received this form. So there's some basic information at the top. We'll ask for your name, email, and your provider ID, the census block group that you're replying to, the technology, and the challenge type. So you can find this in the table that we shared with you via email. And then an explanation of anything that would help reviewers just sort of understand, decode the evidence so they can evaluate it properly, and then upload your evidence file here. You're welcome to submit evidence for more than one census block group in the same submission if there is evidence that covers multiple census block groups, or you can submit them separately, whatever you think is kind of easiest to understand. Similarly, there's an MDU challenge rebuttal form. So you can share your name, your email, provider ID, the location ID of the MDU, which is also on the table that we shared, technology, challenge type, explanation, and evidence. And then this is what it will look like in the portal. You can click on rebuttal opportunities, and then you'll see them here. I don't have any because I'm not a provider, but you will see them here. All right, and now I'm going to go back to my slides. Okay, so like I said, everything is posted on the challenge dashboard, and you'll see that there are 4 statuses. So if you hover over every challenge and you click on it, there's a panel that pops up on the right side with more details, and you'll see the status. So if it says ready for rebuttal, this means that the challenge met the minimum level of evidence and is available for rebuttal either by the provider or any eligible challenger based on the challenge type. Some challenges were rejected because they were duplicates. So sometimes people just submitted the exact same thing, challenge type, provider, technology, and evidence. And so once a challenge was reviewed, and if there was an exact duplicate, we kind of considered them one and the same, so did not need a duplicate in the data set. Rejected incomplete means that a challenge did not meet the minimum level of evidence and so does not move on to the rebuttal phase. If it's withdrawn, sometimes challengers emailed us and said to not count challenges. So we sort of took that and called these withdrawn. And then if a challenge was a part of an area or MDU challenge, then it is marked as superseded by area or MDU challenge. So I'll go to the dashboard in a minute, but just to give an overview. So this is the dashboard that has all of the challenges published. I know folks have asked for a sort of CSV download version. We're working on that as well. But for now, they're here. So you can see the status on the right side. And then I'll go through kind of how to participate in open rebuttal. So I'll share my screen again. Okay, so this is the dashboard, and I got some questions about the difference between the dashboard and the portal. So the main difference is that the dashboard is publicly available. So I'll put the link in the chat, and you should also have this in your email. Go. So anyone can come in and look at this, click around to kind of see what's what here. So I'm just going to point out a couple of features. The main tab on the left-hand side is called Challenges. So this is everything except CAI challenges. And you could search for an address or a town if you would like to better navigate. CAI challenges are CNR challenges, meaning the challenges that said this location should be considered a CAI or this location should not be considered a CAI. And similarly, you can click on them and look at the description on the right-hand side. Area challenges show all of the area challenges that came through. So each of these little shapes is a census block group. So this is a geographic region. We're in the process of updating the overview tab to be updated, so won't be too helpful for you right now. So if you're interested in looking for a specific provider, you can click here and click on someone that you're most interested in seeing. And then challenges for just that provider will show up here. Let's see, that one didn't come up. Let me try another one. Okay, so we have charter. So these are challenges to charter, and these could be submitted by charter or by other challengers. So I'll clear that up. You can also search by a submission ID. And then this checkbox is really helpful if you're particularly a local government or a nonprofit and you want to see what challenges were brought in your community and what is actually eligible for you to rebut using evidence. I suggest clicking on this bottom left checkbox that says show only challenges eligible for open rebuttal. So you can see the map got a little smaller. And to recap on why the map got smaller, it is the challenge type that dictates who can rebut it. And so the only challenges available for open rebuttal are planned and existing service, enforceable commitments, and challenges to CAIs. So all of the other challenge types go directly to the providers because they were challenging their service. So we've added this filter, and okay, let's kind of search around here. So we can click on one. We can view the details here. And let's say that we want to submit our open rebuttal. We can click on submit an open rebuttal. And so you can see some basic information here. If you have questions, we tried to anticipate them and answer them in the beginning of the form. So who can participate, how to pre-register, and what challenges kind of fall into this category. And you'll see that if you access this form through the dashboard, it automatically brings over the challenge ID. And then we just want to know what your email is so we can link you to your pre-registration form. We'll ask for an explanation of your rebuttal and then evidence of your rebuttal, and then submit. If you wanted to rebut an entire region, so if you recall in the challenge phase, we had a lasso feature on our map. We weren't able to build that here, so instead there's a bulk open rebuttal form where you can tell us just loading. So you can tell us a specific challenge type, provider, technology, and a county and a town with an explanation and your evidence. A quick note that we are asking for the provider ID, and so it's pretty easy to find it. You just click here and it opens a spreadsheet and you just find the name, copy and paste the ID, and that's what you'll type in right here. And so this is, we're calling a bulk open rebuttal. If you feel like you have evidence to challenge or to rebut an entire town's challenges that were submitted. And I think those are kind of the main features on this dashboard. Let me go back to my slides and see if I am missing anything. All right, well, we'll dig into the evidence in a moment. I will just show you the pre-registration form. So again, if you pre-registered anytime since January, when we first created that form, you are all set. We have your information. If this form doesn't look familiar, then fill it out before the end of the challenge phase, of the rebuttal phase on May 6th. So we'll just ask for kind of who you are, and then your name and different information so we can get in touch with you and just confirm that you are indeed a part of that nonprofit, that local government, or that internet service provider. So this is open on a rolling basis. You can submit your rebuttal and then fill out this form. Just please complete it by the end of May 6th. All right, so I'm gonna pass it to Shubika to review evidence requirements, and then we'll open it up for questions. So let me share my screen one more time. All right, Shubika, take it away.
Thanks, Devon. And I'm going to keep this a little quick bit because this is recap from last week and we have some good questions in the chat. So in this section, really looking at what are the different pieces of evidence that you can share to rebut a specific challenge that came in for your ISP, or if you are an eligible challenger, how can you rebut some of the challenges in the open rebuttal category. So starting off with availability. So this is when we received evidence that a particular service or technology that was reported at a location was not actually available. A lot of this will go into like direct rebuttal. So permissible evidence would be a screenshot that shows that service is in fact available at that location, which is example B there. For the other two, we have evidence examples on the right. So one could be if there's already a subscriber bill for that location, that could be a good evidence for rebutting such a challenge. And then there is any kind of offer that might have been sent to that specific location that was challenged, that could prove that service is actually available at that location. So those are the three that could be shared for availability. And again, just a note here, with the challenge moving on to the rebuttal phase doesn't really mean that we have accepted that challenge. At this point in time, we're just giving the ISP the opportunity to actually rebut it. And final determinations are only going to be made in the final adjudication stage. So I think, again, as Devon has been mentioning throughout, would definitely appreciate a lot of participation and continued, sharing of information with us so that we can get the maps right. So with the next types of challenges, speed and latency, a lot of this would have screenshots of speed tests taken by users at different locations. So in order to rebut such a challenge, the best would be countervailing speed tests that can be shared through the network management system of the ISP. So again, we have an example here which shows the actual download and upload speeds that the ISP promised for that particular location and that they're able to deliver. So if there is that kind of countering evidence that can be produced for that location, that would be good for such kind of challenges. For the technology challenge, again, this is when a challenger stated that the indicated technology is not available at that location. So we have an evidence example here, which shows that that the residential gateway that is used to actually disseminate that technology is supported by what is currently reported. So that would be a good piece of evidence to rebut such a challenge. If there is a challenge for business service only, again, we have an example of the provider website that shows that they actually provide residential service at that location. So that would be a good, again, piece of evidence to rebut a business service only challenge. Rebutting challenges for CAIs. So there could be availability as well as speed challenges for CAIs. Again, similar to what we've previously discussed. There's just a difference of threshold with CAIs. They should ideally have access to gigabits metric service. So if there is speed test evidence that can show that they have access to gigabits metric or more, that would be good rebuttal evidence. And in case of availability, again, it would be maybe a subscription bill in the last 12 months, or a revised screenshot of service being available at that location, or a copy of the offer that was sent to that particular location of service being available. And now moving on to the second category of rebuttals, which is open for all challenge eligible entities. So that would be firstly beginning with enforceable commitment. So this is when a challenger has reported that they, through prior federal or state grant funding, are going to be serving that particular area. So if there is documentation that the provider has defaulted or they'll not be able to meet that specific commitment, that would be a good piece of rebuttal evidence. In the screenshot here, we have an example of an FCC news article where there is information about defaulting a specific commitment that can be used if there are like other sources that can again prove a similar thing, include that. Planned service is when a provider reported that they will be deploying service at that location by June 30th, 2024. So that is again reflected on the dashboard. If there is documentation that the provider is no longer able to meet that commitment, or if the technology that they've promised at that location does not meet with BEAD requirements, that would be good for submitting a rebuttal. And on the right here, we have an example of a grant agreement that basically shows how that specific technology and speeds might not be eligible for BEAD. So that could be used for the rebuttal. In the next one, not part of an enforceable commitment. This is when in our initial map, we had included locations as part of prior state or federal enforceable commitments. And when we opened that map up for challenge, we received feedback from providers that some of the locations on the fringes were maybe not part of their enforceable commitment. So this is one challenge type that is not open for rebuttals. And based on the initial evidence we received from the ISPs, the office is going to be making a determination on that. The next two, again, quite important ones related to CAIs. As we had seen earlier on the dashboard, there's a separate tab which shows the location is a CAI and location is not a CAI challenge types. So again, in the rebuttal, it is if you're able to prove otherwise. So when someone says location is a CAI kind of challenge, if you are able to show that that location does not in fact fall within the definitions of CAIs as defined in the initial proposal by the state, that would be evidence that you can submit for challenge type C rebuttal. So right here we have an example of how that location might in fact be a business and not really a community anchor institution. And then for location is not a CAI challenges, this is when the rebutter can actually share information that it does fall in the definition of CAIs as defined by the state and it is currently operational. So again, if it's like a library or something that is currently functioning and serving the community, that would be a rebuttal for location is not a CAI type of challenge. Back to you, Devon.
Thanks so much, Yubika. All right, so to close out on our presentation, office hours are going to be the best, most efficient place to get your questions answered. If you have not been to office hours, the way it works is similar to during the challenge phase. So you come in, you'll be in the waiting room. If there's people in line, I'll work with one person, Shubika will work with another. You'll be in your own breakout room, so you don't need to worry about anything confidential being revealed with others. So we'll use that waiting room function. And so if you log on and you need to wait for 20 or 30 minutes, we thank you for your patience as we're trying to get through all the questions. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 to 2 p.m. There's a Zoom link here. It should also be in all of your inboxes. We encourage you to join to troubleshoot those questions that are specific to your entity or your situation. We have our challenge process user guide. That is also helpful. And then, of course, our website, DCEO.illinois.gov/BEADchallenge. So next steps, pre-register to participate in the rebuttal phase. The rebuttal phase is open through May 6th at 11:59 p.m. And then always check our website and our newsletter for any sort of updates. And so with that, I think we can go through some of the questions in the chat, but thank you for bearing with us. I know this is a lot of information and that's really why we have office hours, and we'll try and help clarify wherever we can. All right. So I think to Leanne's question in the chat, if you are an internet service provider and you're seeing challenges on the dashboard that were submitted by the provider against the provider, that's because your ISP submitted planned or existing service challenges or enforceable commitment challenges. So, ISP X said, we actually have service in this region, so we're going to submit a challenge, and thus that would be reflected on the map as submitted by and for your ISP. So you won't be rebutting those, but those go out to the public to have that chance to say whether they have evidence to display otherwise. So hopefully that clarifies. In terms of if you're an ISP and you are waiting on an email from verification at illinoisbroadbandmapping.org, which is the portal, those all went out yesterday. I know that during the challenge phase, these have sometimes gotten stuck in folks' spam or junk. So as a first step, please check your spam or junk mail or whitelist the email address that I had shared. If you want to double check that whether you should be looking for that email or whether you do have rebuttals to reply to, I would just log into the portal again and you'll see rebuttals there. a few rebuttal opportunities there if they are relevant for you. You can also email me or Shabika, and we can just check on our end as well. So lots of ways to confirm. A reminder that every ISP shared a contact person and an email address to receive rebuttals. So if you were not that person, you won't receive rebuttals. If you would like to receive rebuttals, contact us or make sure you're coordinating with that person. We want to make sure that, things are not being duplicative, and it's pretty streamlined with 1 to 2 points of contact for organization. So we have a list of everyone that you shared over the past couple of months for rebuttals. If you want to know who's on that list or have any questions, just email myself or Shabika with your specific question, and we're happy to help. So if I'm seeing some questions, some direct messages about just confirming who's registered to receive rebuttals, if you could just email me, I'll get back to you much more efficiently. Is there a way to export multiple at a time? This might be related to looking at the dashboard. So 2 answers here. One is if you want to do a bulk open rebuttal, there's a form where you can select a challenge type, provider, technology, and geographic area and submit evidence that way. If you're asking about downloading all of the challenges, we're working on making that sort of CSV available for download. We just don't have it quite yet, but we are working on that.
Devon, I think this was more also on the portal side, because if there's a provider who received like multiple challenges that they need to rebut, are they able to download all of them at once?
Got it. Let's see. I think you can download them one submission at a time. Yeah, on the right side, you should be able to.
And I think we're also requesting responses for each of those challenges on like a submission level. So it'll just be easier if you're looking at them one at a time and then responding to each of them separately.
How can you rebut the locations in a submission differently? Okay, I'm Denise. I think this is your question. So I'm seeing, what I'm reading is, if there's a submission with multiple challenges and you want to rebut maybe part of that submission, I would say to provide evidence indicating which location ID or which challenge ID or both you are rebutting, so then we can match it accordingly. In the challenge phase, we asked for a really clear naming convention, because if you're providing an evidence file with 200 pages, we can't go through all of that manually. So we're asking that you kind of label each page so we can use control find to look up the location ID, and in this case, the challenge ID. So think about that there's going to be a human on the other end of this reviewing it. So anything that you can do to make that more clear, streamlined, and efficient, the more likely that the process will be smooth and accurate. So hopefully that answers your question. And, clear labeling of evidence. And if there's a notes, I think there's notes field. So leave us a note on, I'm rebutting this set, I'm accepting this set, and naming the challenge ID is that unique identifier to help us know how to apply your evidence. All right. If we see challenged locations on the dashboard to our ISP that have a status of withdrawn or rejected as incomplete, do we need to gather evidence for rebuttal of these locations? No. If it's withdrawn or rejected as incomplete, it did not move on to the rebuttal phase, so no action required. What if the evidence submitted with the rebuttal does not include any of our locations? Where can the evidence for our locations, I'm in the dark again, be found? I'm assuming you mean if the evidence submitted with the challenge did not include any of our locations. It should include the locations listed in the CSV. If it didn't, maybe shoot me an email so we can look into it. It's possible that the evidence, didn't line up. So just let us know and we'll help you work through that. Can you show how to get to the list of challenges that you had in slide 14? I'm not seeing where to find rebuttal opportunities. Sure. So I'll go back to my browser. So if you go to IllinoisBroadbandMapping.org, if you were a part of the challenge phase, you should already have your login information. If you weren't, then you can register, but you have to be pre-registered. So enter the portal. And then if you have challenges that are available for rebuttal, they'll appear here. So you can click on rebuttal opportunities. If you're not seeing that, then it's possible that there were no challenges against your service. Or maybe they came through as area challenges or MDU challenges. But if you have nothing here, then it's likely that you don't have anything to rebut. Does that make sense?
Also, I think Devon, going back to your previous point that there might be another staff member at your organization who's pointed to as like the main contact for rebuttals. So just making sure that you also check their side of the portal, because that is where all of that information might be.
Yeah, great point. So we confirmed, we went through the exercise of confirming a contact person from every ISP who received a challenge against their service. And so that is where the notifications will be going. And so please reach out if you want us to confirm who that person is, or you need to update that person, and we'll get that done. Okay. Okay. Yeah, just looking more verifications. So Volo Internet and Tech Champaign County.
Yeah, I think I
I'll
checked for Bolo and they don't have any active submissions for rebuttal. So that is one I was able to check.
Okay, great. Yeah, when can we expect the email? That came yesterday. So shoot us a note if you want to confirm that you weren't supposed to receive anything. Please explain the process that challenges are verified. We clearly have challenges for availability that aren't current customers or haven't asked for service. So it depends on what the challenge is, but it does not necessarily need to be a current customer. So if they are challenging speed, then they absolutely do need to be a current customer, or there has to be some sort of technical field validation that was able to measure speed. But really for speed, it has to be those 3 speed tests over 3 days. And looking at the median upload and download speed, and is it below 100 over 20, or is it below 25 over 3? For availability, there's other sorts of evidence that could challenge availability. The sort of household is not required to be a customer, so it could be a notice or a letter communication with that provider. And if you want to share your specific question, we're happy to kind of share more information over email. It's hard to say without seeing the evidence offhand. Any final questions? Okay. Well, I'll just remind everyone that we have office hours every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. And sending us an email with a specific question will, prioritize responding to those. And yeah, Shabika, any final words or reminders?
No, I think, yes, we are having quite a few questions around who is receiving that rebuttal information really. So yeah, let's look into some of those questions offline, and we'll follow up to see who exactly is receiving that information so that you can access that in time to submit your rebuttal responses.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone. I think we can close a few minutes early, but really appreciate your time and energy on this process. We're almost there. Hopefully getting really close to getting to that accurate map. So appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.